Well, welcome again. As I said, I'm the one that's standing between you and beer, so I'm going to make it as quick as I possibly can. But the purpose of my talk here was to give you an idea of what it takes to mobilize your existing Couchbase Server deployment. So let me tell you what I mean by that exactly. The screen in front of me is not working, sir. I can't see anything here. Oops. All right, just give us a second. We're having some technical difficulties. Thank you. All right, I guess the technical difficulty was we had to turn the screen on in front. So again, I'm just going to talk about how do you mobilize your existing Couchbase server deployment. And instead of talking about it, what I'd like to do is I can actually show you guys how it works and show like a real life example of this coming together. So what I'm going to do is I have Couchbase Server installed on my laptop. I have Couchbase Mobile for iOS and Android on my laptop. I'm just going to show you how to start from scratch, like from a bare bones server that you've downloaded from our website. And what does it take to build a simple application that's going to synchronize to your mobile devices as well. So with that, that's our agenda. Let me give you a flavor for how applications typically are. So you have something on a that's deployed on a web property, consumed over a laptop or a desktop, and that is working with an application server. And that application server has a Couchbase client library. One of our SDKs could be C, could be Go, could be Java, .NET, any of those ones that you're having, which is essentially then persisting data back into Couchbase Server. You bring in mobile into the mix, and then you have mobile clients that have embedded Couchbase Lite database. That's the instance of our full-featured NoSQL database on devices. That and your mobile application is essentially interacting with Couchbase Lite, which then transparently synchronizes or replicates data back to Couchbase Server. So the reality today is that if you have a mobile deployment and an app that's running in an application server that's accessible over laptops or desktops, then those two are typically managed as separate buckets. You can't have the same bucket being shared between mobile apps and web or desktop apps. With Couchbase 5.0 and Sync Gateway 1.5, which is what has been released in GA today, that goes away. So you program to Couchbase whichever bucket you want to, whether it's the same bucket or different buckets. But that essentially, what that translates into is the fact that you don't have to maintain separate infrastructure. By that, what I mean is that today, if you had to do this before 1.5 and 5.0 was released, these would be separate buckets. If you wanted to have interoperability between mobile data and data coming from a web app, then you'd have to set up some sort of bucket shadowing or replication of data between buckets. And that was fairly complicated. So we've taken all the complexity out, and with the latest release, it just works. So you just go ahead, get your mobile apps pointing to the Couchbase Server infrastructure and your web apps pointing to the same infrastructure, and that will work like a charm. And over the next 15 to 20 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how that is done. So what's happened in the new release that's actually making this change? So I have a picture of before and after over here. Before, what we had was there's basic information about a document, which is the fixed metadata, for example, the cast, the expiry, the key. That was all available. And then there was information about the document. So your key value attributes were captured about a document in the document structure. When Sync Gateway came into the mix, which means it was a Couchbase Mobile deployment, the sync metadata was essentially plugged into the same structure. But with Couchbase Server 5.0, we've essentially gotten the concept of system extended attributes. And what that means is that all of the sync gateway metadata, which was originally a part of the document itself, is now completely abstracted from any application using that document. So the documents wouldn't know that there is any metadata related with that particular document, which is why before 5.0, it was very difficult to have web and desktop apps and mobile apps working off of the same bucket. But with 5.0, you can do that fairly easily and in a transparent fashion. So now, with that, let me switch over to the live demo. And I'm just going to flip out of PowerPoint. And if I can get my screen. So I'm going to start by quitting all the apps that I have to. And I restarted my laptop, I think, this morning sometime when I was having all sorts of funny issues with it. So I don't have anything running here. I've just downloaded Couchbase. So let me go to couchbase.com. Hopefully, Wi-Fi is still working. And I think Wi-Fi is not working right now. So I'm not going to show you where to download stuff from. But you can actually go to couchbase.com, and there's a downloads button on the right-hand side, and you can download Couchbase Server and Sync Gateway 1.5 from there. They were released in GA there. So once you've installed Couchbase Server, it's going to look something like this. You're going to have an application. I'm using a Mac. I'm just going to go ahead and start my Couchbase Server. So I just did that, and then with that, I'm going to open the admin console for Couchbase Server. So here's my administrator, and I'm going to log in. And you can see that I have one data node over here, and I was supposed to remove all this data. So let me just go ahead and remove this. Do a little bit of cleanup before I show you how to do this from the very beginning. So this is what a brand new Couchbase Server installation would look like. So if I come here, you can see that I only have one server, which is this local host. And then when I look at buckets, I have no data. If I look at security, there are no users defined today. So I'm going to start by defining a new bucket, and I'm going to say the name of the bucket is data bucket. That's the bucket that I'm using. This is where I'm going to be storing all of my data, both for a web app as well as for a mobile app. I'm not going to look into muck around with any settings. I'm just going to use what I have, and you'll see on the left-hand side here this orange sidebar. As soon as the bucket is ready, turn into a green sidebar. And the other thing that I'm going to do is, because applications are going to be running, writing data to the server, they need to authenticate themselves. So I'm going to add a user. I'm going to call that user sg-user. Full name is, this is the user that's going to be creating records from Sync Gateway. And I'm going to provide a very secure password for it, which is password. Thankfully, this is on my local machine. Please don't do that on a real cluster. And then the key thing to note is that I'm going to give, for this particular bucket, the one that I just created, I'm going to give full bucket admin access to the user that I just created. I'm going to save this user, and that's it. There is no data in my bucket. You can see that. That's all 0 right now. And my Couchbase server is essentially primed for taking incoming connections, whether that is, or being able to read and write data, whether that is from an application, or rather desktop or web application, or it's from a mobile application. So let me do right that. Once I've done that, the second thing you need to do is set up Sync Gateway. So I'm going to open a terminal, navigate. So just before I came here, I had installed the latest version of Sync Gateway as well. I have a directory called dev. This is the latest version of Sync Gateway, and this is the directory that I need to navigate to. So I'm just going to say change directory to, there we go. And I'm in Sync Gateway. So the one interesting thing over here is that I have this file over here called Sync Gateway Convergence. This is the file that is going to define the configuration for Sync Gateway. So I'm going to define a database over here, which is called to do, and we'll come into why I'm using this name in just a second. It's going to connect with my local host. This is the name of the server. And these are settings that I've actually downloaded of one of our GitHub projects for you to get started with Sync Gateway. So I'd created a bucket called Data Bucket in Couchbase Server. You'll see that name highlighted over here. And I've given the username and password right here. So this is the username and password that the Sync Gateway is going to use to interact with the Couchbase Server. There's a couple other things that I'd like to point out, that I've also created a couple of other users over here. So when we have Couchbase Mobile in the mix, I think one of the interesting things to note is that it's not just about authenticating with the server, which is coarse-grained authentication. You also have to figure out, like, when people are logging in from mobile apps, how are they going to authenticate? So this list of users that you see over here is the very basic authentication to get started with Sync Gateway. So I'm just applying the username and password over here, and I have a couple of channels just for showing how to add channels over here created. So with this configuration, and all of this configuration is available on our GitHub page. If the network comes back, I can send you that, and those links will also be there in the presentation in a later slide. So with this, I'm going to set up start the Sync Gateway. So the way to start Sync Gateway is run the Sync Gateway binary and specify the JSON file, the Sync Gateway configuration file. So this is the file where we configured everything. So I'm just going to go ahead and start it. And there we go. I have my Sync Gateway ready. I have Couchbase running on my local machine. And the third thing that I need to do is get a mobile app installed. So I have a couple of mobile apps that are running off of my laptop. I'm going to start with the Xcode app. I'm just opening Xcode right now, and this is the sample or the tutorial app that we have available on Couchbase Mobile. So what I've done is I've essentially downloaded the mobile app from our Couchbase tutorial website. Let me see if the network connectivity is up. Okay. Can anybody look at the network connectivity in this room? I think there's some issue over there. Not working, right? Yeah. I was just going to ask the folks in the back. There's an issue with the network connectivity. Can we check it out, or? Yeah. Can we check out the network connectivity, please? All right. Thank you. So while she's doing that, I think I can go ahead and keep going, and we can come back to the where to download all of this code from. So this is the application. The only thing I want to make sure, or the things that I change over here, are that I'm going to use localhost, which is the server that I've deployed. Sync Gateway URL that I've deployed. It's on port number 4984, and the database that I was going to be using is to do. So if I go back to my Sync Gateway configuration, this is the database that I've defined here. So with that, I'm going to start this app. I'm going to use, for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to be using the emulators on my device. If you were here for the tech keynote, you saw this whole thing working on a live device, but I think what I like to do is, because I don't want like any dependency on the network, like you saw the network is not working, I like to make sure that everything is self-contained on my laptop. And I'll come back to that in a little bit. But let me just launch an iPhone. And here's the iPhone simulator. And I'm going to essentially, so this is the app that was started. So I'm going to see if I can scale it down a little bit so that you can see it.
I just connected right up. You're on
Couchbase? Okay.
yeah, Couchbase. It's Connect 17 is the pass, capital C.
Yep. Thank you. All right, it's again doing the same thing. It's probably connecting on the device, but not here. But let me keep on going with the demo. Is this large enough, or should I make it larger? So let me enter my username and password over here. I think I'd created 2 users. One was Sachin, and the other one is Pass. This has gotten a little too slow for me. Let me log in. And as you can see, this is so let me just actually quit this and restart it, because I minimized it, and all of a sudden it looked funky on the. There we go. It's the same size. I can't seem to resize it. Okay, it's got to do with the display, so I'll make do with this. I'll log in as Sachin. The password is pass. I've kept it in clear text to match it to the users that we'd created in this file over here. So if you see for username Sachin, the password is pass. With that, I come in here and I create a new task. I'm going to call it, so my wife is always reminding me about doing groceries. I'm just going to call that groceries. And I come in here and there are two things that I need to buy for the groceries. Tomatoes, if I've spelled it right, and potatoes. There we go. So what I've done is I've basically started an app, and all of this code is available on our website. And I've just created a couple of items in my grocery list, which is a task list that I've created right on the fly. So this is all working on the emulator. The emulator has the embedded Couchbase Lite database, so which means it's created locally on the device. How do you know that this has been synchronized back to the server or not? So let's go and look. So if I go back to the admin console, I have this beautiful query interface where I can actually run queries. So let me go ahead and first of all, don't do this on production, but at least for this demo, you can do this. I'm just going to sorry, I forgot the syntax here. There's the right syntax. So let me go ahead and create an index so that all of my queries will return results. As you can see, I've done this demo a few times. So let me look at the tasks. And this is all the data that we created. Let me put in a better query so that we can, there we go. There we go. So we just created a task list called groceries. The owner, as you can see over here, is Sachin, and the type of the document is the task list. So this is a record that we created on the mobile phone over here, and you can see that the same record is created over here as well. So this is fairly straightforward. This is what Couchbase Mobile is supposed to do, where anything that you create on the mobile phone gets transparently synchronized back to Couchbase Server. Now let's try the opposite, because that's the big thing that we've changed right now. So I'm going to, for the purposes of this demonstration, let me just open up another terminal and bring up a Python script. So I'm just going to resize my window so you can see both windows side by side, and there we go. And let me navigate to the directory that has all of this information. So Couchbase, content, my content. I did this the last time around in New York as well. So I'm just going to open this and drop it into Visual Studio Code. So if you see over here, I have a Python script, a very simple Python script that creates a task list for Sachin. The two things that's creating for Sachin is Sing Gateway 1.5. And I think it's saying it's code complete, QE complete, release the software. When I first created this demo, it was release beta, which is what you're seeing out there. And then I have also, for another user, Seth, who's a colleague of mine who's a partner in crime in creating this demo. I have, what do you do when the demo laptop crashes? Switch to backup, realize that there's no backup, and panic. And just because I'm in panic mode, I have a list of cool Eagle singles that I like out here. So I'm just going to, if I go back to the original premise of this conversation with Couchbase, the latest release of Couchbase Server, you can create data using any of our existing SDKs. And when you create that data is going to be available on mobile devices as well. So let me execute this Python script. Oops, I don't think I'm in the correct. No wonder. Let me come here. CD go to demo scripts, clear, and I do ls, and there we go. So I'm just going to execute this Python script right now. And once that is done, the script should return. I think there's something funny going on with my... Okay. So the script just returned, and I've gone ahead and created these additional records. So I may have executed it twice, which, if that's the case, but let me go back to the document data that was generated. So I just created 2 additional tasks for Sachin here. So I come back here. We're on the mobile device. If all the connectivity was right, then if you go back to the task list, I should see 2 additional ones out there. So there you are. I just went back from to the original screen on my mobile phone, and in the task list, I can see 2 additional tasks out here. So the first one is my top 5 Golang routines, and then you see all the information that we'd added in here as additional tasks in this list. If I go back to Sync Gateway 1.5, I have the things that I had out there. I should probably update that release beta to release the GA version, but all of that information is available over here. To demonstrate the cross-platform capabilities of Couchbase, we have the same application available on Android as well. So I'm just going to open up Android Studio and then launch the same app in Android Studio. And this time around, what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in as the second user that we had created. So the second user was my colleague Seth. Before I do that, let me go ahead and start the. So I'm going to be using the Pixel device, the emulator for this purpose. So it's just getting started. For those of us who used Android Studio, you can know that it's quite a memory hog and can take a little bit to get started. We'll give it a second, and then there we go. So this time around, I'm going to log in as Seth, and again, it's a very secure password, just like the other one. I'm going to sign in, and what I expect to see is data for Seth. So if I go back to my my Python script over here, so I should have eagle singles, and then what do you do when a demo laptop crashes? So thankfully, the demo laptop is not crashing today, so I don't have to do any of this, but you've seen that I've created data for 2 different users using Sync Gateway on one side and mobile on one side, and then a Python script on the other side. And that data is then being disseminated to all of the downstream mobile devices based on the profile of the user that's logging into the mobile device. Again, to bring home the point, let me go back and log out this app and log back in here as Sachin. So when I log back in on both devices as Sachin, I'm going to be seeing the same data. So right now I am logged in as Sachin on 2 devices. Oops. So rather 2 device emulators. So I'm going to go into Sync Gateway 1.5 on both of these. And then one of the other nifty features we have in the app is that once I get done with the task, I just mark it as complete. So if you noticed, when I marked it as complete on the iOS device, it was marked complete on the Android device as well. If I go ahead and mark it as complete on the Android device, it gets completed on this thing. I think the simplest message would be that what you can do with iCloud, where you're logging in from like multiple accounts. I just showed you a very simple example of an app that's actually doing the exact same thing over there. Where this gets even more interesting is that you can't just do this. I mean, you can do this on the mobile device. I think that is expected behavior, but let me make matters a little bit more interesting and go back to the query workbench that I had. And if I resize, yes. There we go. This should look a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is, so I have all of these tasks completed right now. For this particular user, which is Sachin for this particular task list, I'm just going to say, you know what, set the complete status to false. So let me execute this query. And if you noticed on both of those emulators, the check marks have gone away. Let me just to show you once more, execute it again, and then you see the check marks coming back up. Now, this is where this becomes really, really interesting because what's happening behind the scenes is extremely complex. But what I've shown you is I used to be a PL/SQL programmer back in the day. When I hit an update statement, there was something that would show up in my console, which is what you see. But at that same time, that update is actually resulting into information being disseminated to mobile devices in a secure, filtered, replicated, replication between the actual device and Couchbase Server, where Sync Gateway is acting as a secure proxy. Now, the big thing with mobile devices is that they keep on going online and offline. So again, I want to keep everything contained to this laptop. So what I'm going to do is on my Android simulator, because that's the only one that supports it, I'm just going to turn on airplane mode. So you'll see on the top right-hand corner of the Android device that the Android device is right now in the airplane mode. And what I'm going to do is on the back end, I'm just going to go ahead and turn this to false. You'll see on the right-hand side of the screen, because the device is connected, it's the same user. It's still Sachin. Sachin's data on the iOS device is updated, but on the on the left-hand side of the screen, it's still not updated because the device is offline. So that's a real-world scenario. Let me go ahead and turn it back to online. There we go. So now the device is back online. And again, if you were at the keynote demo, you would have seen this happening instantaneously. But the behavior of the Pixel emulator, the one that I use in all my demos, is that it takes a good 10 to 15 seconds for the network connectivity to come back. So again, this is the way the emulator behaves. And for the purposes of this demo, I wanted to give you this message that with Couchbase Mobile, you have everything working on your laptop. You don't need anything else, whether it is connecting to a cloud to set up a management infrastructure or any external software. All the software that you need for getting this to work end-to-end, all the way from Couchbase Server or an application working with Couchbase Server to getting it working on a mobile device can be done on your laptop. So if you just noticed, it takes a good 10 to 15 seconds, and again, it can be temperamental. There are times when I've seen this happen in less than 5 seconds as well. But you can rest assured that when you're building your apps and you're testing it out on live devices, all of this happens instantaneously. But what I just showed you was the ability to build an application. If you have an existing web application, you can extend that application for mobile very, very easily with Couchbase. Or the other way around, if you have a mobile application, then you want to add like web interfaces for that application, you just choose the SDK that you want and then go from there. That was the demonstration. Then let me go back into my slides and I'll walk through them fairly quickly, as I've already gotten the 10-minute warning. Let me go back in just to give you a quick flavor of the things that you have to think of. So recap. All right, I was probably going to put up a slide on what I was going to demo before I did the demo, but better late than never. So now that we've seen the live demo, I think I'll recap the quick key configuration changes. So we created a Sync Gateway user and made sure that that user had the right access, which was bucket admin, and for the bucket that we were going to use for shared data between a web app and a mobile app. We created the configuration within Sync Gateway as well, and we had the enabled this information right here. And I think in the subsequent slide, I can tell you exactly where to find this on the web as well. Then we went back into the application the mobile app that you would have downloaded from our tutorial page on our website, on our developer portal, and made sure that the Sync Gateway URL is pointing to the local host that you're running on or wherever you're running Sync Gateway, and the correct port number on that, and that the database name that you're using is the same that you'd configured on the Couchbase server side. sorry, on the Sync Gateway side. So the key benefit to Couchbase customers is that you can very easily create mobile experiences. You can manage your data a lot more easily as well because you're just managing it in one single infrastructure, which is Couchbase. That's true not only of mobile apps, but it's also true for apps that have both mobile and web pieces. Then from a total cost of ownership perspective, given that you have the same infrastructure, the same DevOps teams working for both mobile and web stacks, the amount of investment that you need to get up and running with either mobile or extending a mobile app to the web or vice versa is the same. So if you're a mobile-first customer, it's a win for you there. But if you're not a mobile-first customer, if you're a server-first customer, you can easily start with mobile there as well. There's a couple of things to think about from a deployment perspective, which you should keep in mind. So user management. User management when you're building end-user facing applications is very different from when you're building database applications. The way to think about it is that when I log in from my phone into an app, I have to supply my own username password. When I'm building an application that's sitting in the middle tier, I just need to connect to the database server on behalf of all of my actual end users. Sync Gateway cluster, you want to make sure your Sync Gateway cluster is sized for the kind of workloads that you're going to be running. Data management, like one bucket, multiple buckets, how do you want to split data across those buckets? If you want like a subset of that data within a bucket to be mobile enabled, we have options and knobs for you to do that as well. And last but not least, the security across the full stack. I just showed you a very simple authentication mechanism which is basic auth, HTTP, where you're adding your username and password in the Sync Gateway config file. That's obviously great to get started, but that's not what you're going to be using when you deploy it in production. So using the right authentication configuration and then figuring out what that is definitely a deployment consideration there. Where does this fit in with IoT? So most of Couchbase mobile deployments are what you're seeing here. There's Couchbase Lite sitting on a device that's then talking over the worldwide web to Couchbase Sync Gateway, which is an internet-facing component that in turn is connected to Couchbase Server. What we're seeing, like I think if you were at the Connect keynote demo, you would have seen, we're seeing a whole bunch of IoT sensors show up, and those IoT sensors are communicating with Couchbase Lite, in some cases over NFC, in other cases over Bluetooth, in some cases over a direct TCP connection as well. So there is a level of abstraction over there that's coming in, and that's how IoT fits into this whole scheme of things. The key message, hopefully after you've seen the demo, I think is that it's really easy to extend a Couchbase Server deployment to create mobile and IoT apps. And the fact that you're fully operational and working on this laptop means that you can be sitting on a beach if you wanted to and still be completely productive without an internet connection at all. A couple of resources that I'd like to point out. I think I showed you a bunch of things over there. So these are the URLs for where you can download the bits for server and Sync Gateway from. The config file, I've actually called that out, the specific name of the config file I use so you can get started quickly. And then the sample application. So we have a GitHub project for the sample app, as well as the tutorial for building and creating that sample app on our developer portal. So I have all the links in here for anybody who wants to go back home and try this on your own. With that, how are we doing on time? Okay, so we have if there's any questions in the room, and I think if there is any, then please speak into the mic so that we can get it for the live stream as well.
So with the IoT devices, is there a way to model or mimic time series, like the order in which the data comes into the mobile device to sync up with the backend?
I think there certainly are ways, but I think that is something that you would have to manage on your side. So we're a document database. You can definitely model documents as time series documents. So for each timestamp, you can have the document created and then capture whatever information you want. And then for a certain time slice, you can maybe push that information back to the cloud. And if that works for you, yeah. But that's the data modeling exercise more than like technology stack exercise.
Capability on the
Yes.
Couchbase side. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Well, if not, thank you very much for being here. I know I'm the one between you and beer, so let's go and have some beers at the reception. Thank you.